You know, it's all too easy to get stuck in a rut in the garden, especially if it's an established garden and people have come to see features that they know and love. But 3 years ago, celebrated garden writer Christopher Lloyd ripped out the famous rose garden at Great Dixter and replaced it with his idea of a tropical paradise. He showed it off to Stephen Lacey.
I think it's rather fun each summer to get the feeling that you're a good deal nearer the equator than you know you are.
But this is a complete transformation, is it? Because 3 years ago, this was in fact a rose garden.
It was, and it had been for 80 years. It's a very hot enclosed garden, and the roses loathed it. And I couldn't change them without changing the soil. You know how it is, and they get all these diseases. I thought a change would be wonderful.
I think you wrote that the sound of the ripping roots as they were extracted was music to your ears.
It was a tearing noise, rather like a hyena tearing up a plank of wood. You've heard that in Africa, I'm sure.
A surprising number of people seem to be upset by it and take it personally, didn't they? I mean, a stab at Britain's favourite flower.
Well, I believe the members of the Royal National Rose Society put down their fallen membership to me.
But roses you still use, don't you, in the garden?
Well, there are very few now, Stephen. There are about a dozen, but they do serve as a peg to grow annual climbers on, like this Mina lobata, loving the structure of the rose.
It's a beautiful combination with the buds.
Yes.
And the colours are turning in beautifully with this canna, which is clearly one of the theme plants in the garden.
Cannas have loved this year, but I really fell for cannas when I saw them in Nairobi way back in the 1940s. And they, instead of being grown the horrible way they do in parks and public gardens as dot plants, which is such an insult, there they were in a drift under trees with flowing water going past them, and I was hooked then.
The gigantic foliage is obviously a crucial part for setting the mood, isn't it, and springing ambushes.
That's right, and the banana is one of those. And what's extraordinary about that is that it actually is hardy. It's a Japanese species, and we leave it there in the winter, but wrap it up with lots of ferns all the way up its trunk. The leaves die away, and they come back again in the spring.
Do you think generally people do play a bit too safe in their gardening?
Well, they don't allow themselves sufficient scope. I think they refuse to grow annuals because they're too much trouble. They won't grow tender perennials because they're too much trouble. And, you know, what you're left with, really not very much to do at home.
But the rewards are so great, aren't they, when you do branch into...
Of course, I mean, look at the excitement that's just waiting around the corner.
Christopher Lloyd, a great gardener who's influenced many of us. In fact, this plant of Verbena bonariensis came from his tropical garden at Great Dixter. Now, a couple of weeks ago, some of you may have been surprised to see me recommending an ericaceous compost for potting heathers, assuming that ericaceous meant it contains peat. That's not necessarily the case. An ericaceous compost contains no lime, and the one I was using was in fact based on coir. Now, earlier this year, Jeff Hamilton announced a competition to find the best small garden in Britain. The rules said it should be no more than 2,000 square feet in size and that it should be planted up for year-round interest. We received almost 400 entries. After a lot of deliberation, the judges chose John Tordoff's garden in Hackney, London. It's imaginatively designed and laid out, combines a number of different traditions in one small space, and all the features and ornaments were made by Mr. Tordoff himself. The judges felt that the garden fulfilled the requirement of year-round interest better than any of the others. So Mr. Tordoff wins the first prize of a Mediterranean garden cruise on the Black Prince this autumn. That's it for this week. If you'd like a fact sheet that covers the last 5 programmes, send a £2 cheque or postal order made payable to GWFS7 to this address. GWFS7, PO Box 9938, London W6 7WL. That's also it for this year. It's been a sad year for us all. We'll miss Jeff Hamilton tremendously. I'll be back next year endeavouring to transform this grassy paddock at the top of my hill into something resembling a beautiful garden with a bit of help from the machinery. So, till next February, bye-bye.
There's another chance to see the warm tributes paid to Jeff Hamilton on Tuesday here on BBC Two at 8:30.